diversity and all of the demographic shifts, there's a lot of work that's being shown now on the impact to employee engagement. And it, interestingly enough, has dropped. What do you think engagement is now? If we look at it across the U.S. first, what do you think the level of engagement is? The Gallup organization has been tracking this for decades. And they track it on three continuums, three dimensions. Those that are actively engaged, those that are disengaged, and then those that are actively disengaged. Isn't that interesting, right? So it gets worse than disengaged. Disengaged is bad enough. So out of 100%, what would you say our workers report that they are engaged? What percent of workers are engaged? About 35%? Like 40%? Who else? 55% are engaged, are highly engaged. Interesting. That would be wonderful if that were the case. Only 32% of workers in the U.S. are actively engaged. 52% report that they are disengaged, and 16% report that they are actively disengaged. So what does an actively engaged worker look like?
Willing to do new tasks.
They're what?
Willing to take on new tasks.
Yes, willing to take on new tasks. What else? Actively. How many of you have actively engaged workers working for you? What do they look like? What do they do?
Eager.
High potentials. They're energetic. They're innovative. Yes, they're problem solvers. They're invested in your success. What else? Yeah, they'll work on other committees. So they volunteer instead of getting voluntold. They're willing to step up and take on extra work. They're willing to give discretionary effort, meaning they will go above and beyond what is asked. And they're willing to do it. They're happy, they're satisfied, they're passionate about their work, and you get great productivity from them. The problem is that's only 32% of your workers. The other 68% do not want to be there. I tell leaders all the time, as we're talking about how do you build inclusive and winning cultures, it starts, first of all, with leadership, right? And so I tell leaders that you have a lot of workers in your workplace that they quit a long time ago, they just didn't leave. They're still there. And particularly, a lot of this started to take a decline over the last 10 years. Anytime you've got a global recession and you start to have cutbacks and right-sizing and downsizing and budget freezes and merit freezes, and yet the workers go away, but the work doesn't. And people find themselves doing more with less. And then after a while, they become burnt out, they feel overwhelmed, they get stressed, there's a lot of depression, and the American Psychological Association, as well as the Mental Health America study reports that we have 50% of all workers are reporting that they have greater levels of stress than normal, and that they have greater levels of depression and anxiety than normal. 21 million Americans report that they are experiencing depression at work. And yet we see higher levels of absenteeism because people are calling in sick. And as I tell leaders, you know people don't leave bad jobs or they don't leave bad organizations, they leave bad bosses. So when they're calling in sick, they're not really sick, they're just sick of you. There's a difference. We call those mental days. I just can't take it today, I just need a mental break, right? We've all been there. How many of you ever worked for a bad boss? You know what that's like. A bad boss or working in a toxic culture. And if your boss is here, just wink. I know you don't want to get in trouble. It's all good. I understand that. But if you, and hopefully you've learned from bad bosses what not to do and what not to be. But we were talking about the demographic shifts and key drivers of engagement, key drivers of talent acquisition, key drivers of retention starts with the leadership. That's one of them. And then certainly having an inclusive, welcoming culture where people feel like they can come and be their best selves and be able to contribute and have equal access to opportunities. Globally, that number is not much better. So I just talked about the U.S. numbers, 32% of workers according to the Gallup organization. And that was their 2016 numbers. According to Towers Watson, they did the study globally, and again, 40% highly engaged, but they track it on a 4 continuum, which is unsupported, those that feel detached, and those that also feel disengaged. So again, 60% of workers globally are also not as engaged. So we have an issue. We have to make sure that not only do we go out and recruit the great talent based on the labor pool numbers now, but then you want to keep them. And there are some realities here. Think about this. I was talking a little bit about the millennials, but this is a reality here that $30 billion is lost in productivity with millennial turnover. When you look at, again, replacement costs, it's somewhere between 16 to 200% to replace that great talent when they leave. And some of them check out pretty early, right? So disengagement means I'm there, but I'm not really invested, I'm not really committed, I'm not really present, right? I'm visible, but I'm not present. And their presence is about being there in the moment and making things happen. 200% to replace workers. And a lot of them will come into organizations. We sell them a bill of goods in the interview, how wonderful it is to work here and all the great opportunities and the great team and the wonderful leaders. And they get in there and within 3 to 4 weeks, they start feeling like, wow, no one's invited me out to lunch. Wow, I don't even know where the restrooms are. Wow, I still don't even have a laptop. Oh my God, I don't even have a computer or a cell phone to get my job done. And they start to kind of feel like, wow, I got buyer's remorse. Right, I start to regret a little bit of my decision because I was told all these things were going to be in place and they're not there. The greatest amount of turnover happens within the first 6 months. And so we've got to make sure that we're focusing on not only a wonderful selection process, but a great onboarding and a great orientation process, as well as peer coaching and mentoring and allowing people to feel like they are set up for success from day one. That will increase your retention. It also will increase engagement. But what's also startling to recognize that those numbers here in the U.S. can hit nearly $550 billion in lost productivity when people are disengaged. So there is an impact to how we hire, who we hire, and then certainly how we treat them when they get into the organization. So this is something that leaders have control over. We can control engagement. The 5 key drivers of engagement are things like leadership, my direct report, my direct supervisor, my direct manager. It's also challenging work, right? Purpose and mastery of what I do. They also want to work for a company that allows the flexibility. They want to have life-work balance or life-work integration. There's no such thing as balance, but life-work integration. And then they also want to work for a company that's got a great brand and a great reputation and they can feel proud to work for and tell people that they're working for your company.